This is the quintessential King Arthur story. I love this book. I love it.
What makes it great is the complexity and clarity of a battle sequence.
And now I figured out I'm a British simp. I figured that out. Give me more of this. Welcome back to another Tutor Ramble episode. I'm one of your hosts, Austin.
I'm your other host, Richard.
The Winter King by Bernard Cornwell. Spoiler-free and spoiler review. We'll do spoiler-free. We will warn you before we do spoilers. This is a must-read. This is an instant Austin must-read. This book is kick-ass. This is a historical fiction book written by Bernard Cornwell, and it's the first of a trilogy, the Warlord Chronicles trilogy. I'll be blowing through the series. I am going to blow so hard. I'm gonna be reading this series so hard, and it's got me those thrills, those feels. Rich, did you feel as excited as I did?
Apparently not. No, I think book good. Book good.
No, book is excellent. Book is excellent. How would you just so there's some bravado, I'll pitch right after you, but who would you say should read the book?
Basically all you history nerds that really like medieval battles, you're gonna get scratch the itch. If you're reading a lot of fantasy and going like, hey, battles aren't normally this big, or hey, they're using their swords wrong, or not every the soldiers don't carry swords. Swords were too expensive in the medieval days. They carried spears. If you're one of those nerds, this book is for you, because most of them use spears because it's more historically accurate.
This is the quintessential King Arthur story. I've read one of them, and it's it is the quintessential King Arthur story. This was pitched by
the other one could be this, the Sword of the Stone.
I haven't. No, this is the King Arthur story. So Albert pitched it on our page. This was our book club of the month that was selected. We only read this because of our patrons picked it out.
Yep.
And this to give a bit of a spoiler-free summary of what you're getting yourself into. It's a framed narrative of this character named Durfil, who is writing about the legendary King Arthur. So it's in that Great Gatsby-esque sense where you don't actually get Arthur's perspective. You get Arthur's perspective from Durfil, who is a loyal soldier working with, that you find out right away is working for and loves King Arthur. And he's writing down this tale in the present day and is showing us what was the actual true tale behind King Arthur. It takes place, as all King Arthur tales do, in the post-Roman Empire's fall, around 400, 500, 600, that time-ish, around 400 to 600-ish, that time period. So they call it, early medieval time period? That's the right...
Sure.
Early medieval time period, historical fiction, and Bernard Cornwell, from what I've seen and heard, just because I'm just being introduced to him by this book, but his historical accuracy, the praise he's gotten, I believe George R. R. Martin did praise him as well for having the best prose and battle sequences and most visceral way of describing things. And it's not just that. I know I get excited over my fights and my gore, but I'm telling you, this book has the whole package. I will give a little snippet right here with our new and improved technology of this very cool scene, which is not a spoiler at all. It's just gets you in the action, the feel of what Bernard Cornwell's doing with the Winter King. Okay, this is just the feel of what you get.
Terror. But then Gwilithin leapt out of his ambush and screamed a war cry as he ran forward. I ran with him, and suddenly I was released from fear as the mad, God-given joy of battle came to me for the very first time. Later, much later, I learned that the joy and the fear are the exact same things, the one merely transformed into the other by action. But on that summer afternoon, I was suddenly elated. May God and his angels forgive me. But that day, I discovered the joy that lies in battle, and for a long time afterwards, I craved it like a thirsty man seeking water.
It's just, if you want to get, it gives you that pre-battle roar and fervor coming from Durfil, who is now in the present day this religious man. And he's found Christ and found God. One of the lines I love from this, again, I'm keeping this spoiler-free as possible. So, you know what? I'll say the line when we get the spoilers. You don't deserve it yet. You got to read the book before you want more lines of this. It has that. But then on top of this, in the King Arthur tale, incredible takeaways about, I don't want to touch on other themes other than saying peace, justice, ambition, and charisma, packaged in a really thought-provoking way, and the story takes place in 5 parts where it spans and it feels very epic in nature. And this is just part 1. What I hate about a lot of the books we've been reading, and I mean hate, this is what I've been hating. A lot of the book ones we read, we go, yeah, I'm enthused, cool. Starting off, good setup, awesome. Even a lot of the book ones we don't like, and then book 2 wows us. Here's a series where book 1 already wows you. I've heard it only gets better. I'm going to love this series. Highly, highly recommend historical fiction fans. I would compare this. Rich, you're here, I know. But hey, Rich, how you doing? So I would compare this book in the sense, it's a little bit of a stretch. Hear me out for a second. But Lions of El Rasan is a historical fiction novel which also takes place in the same time period, similar time period, but in medieval Spain, early medieval Spain. It's also historical fiction and kind of has that feel. They're the few historical fiction I've dove into that time period, that feel that you get completely immersed and lost into that technology. Bernard Cornwell does it top tier. I can read the book. High recommendation. Thank you to Albert again for picking it out for the book club. We'll have the link of the description below. We're going to be covering all 3 of these with or without Rich in that chair. Albert might just join us. I love this book. I love it.
I'm real glad you do. I liked the book too. It was a good book.
You seem like you're at gunpoint, sword point. You're just like, yeah I really, yeah.
Well, I'm going to seem like an asshole now in comparison. I thought the book was good.
What'd you like about it? Still spoiler free.
All the things that you mentioned. Yeah, exactly. I do want to clarify on when we talk about Bernard Cornwell, he is frequently mentioned for his battle sequences.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to clarify that, is it like guttural, like, kind of visceral imagery? Somewhat, yes. But that's not what makes it great. What makes it great is the complexity and clarity of a battle sequence, of knowing which side, knowing properly the amount of information, like how many people are on one side, how many people are on the other, different battle tactics, and the timing and pause between it, the heat of battle, the fog of war effect, like all of those complex aspects really sets you into the battle. Instead of, say, maybe a Joe Abercrombie where he excels at battle sequences when it's like one man in the melee, the melee. Yeah. And like, so the chaos around, and like you're following one character, and the chaos of war and all this, that's what he's great at. I think Bernard Cornwell handles a little bit zoomed out aspect
100%.
of a battle, which is really fun and hard to do. So I want to say that's the praise for his battle sequences, rather than just like the action itself.
Yes, that is exactly what it is. And to that point, I saw some characters in this book, and some of the feel gave me an Abercrombie feel. Not that this is grimdark, but as in, it seemed that Joe Abercrombie might have taken some inspiration from some Cornwell characters. For example, there's this, obviously in Arthurian legends, there's Merlin, the druid, the magician, the wizard in these Arthurian tales. And Merlin had a lot of similarities to these, spoiler free, I'm not spoiling Abercrombie either, but to Baez in the First Law. And Baez in First Law is that quirky wizard character in that series. So I reached out to Joe Abercrombie. I sent him an email saying, hey, I just finished Bernard Cornwell's The Winter King. I was curious if this character Merlin in Bernard Cornwell's Warlord Chronicles was inspired. Was this your inspiration? Because this was written, I should have the date here, I believe 1990. I will double check on that right after this. But this was written much before The First Law was. And Joe Abercrombie, he responded saying this. This was his response to that inspiration. He said, hey, I've read some Sharp and Last Kingdom books, but not The Winter King. Though Merlin as a whole certainly had a big influence on Baez, especially Nicole Williamson version in Excalibur. So Merlin-esque characters did. He didn't read exactly this, but he got some inspiration from those Merlin characters in adjacent books, which I thought was super cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to Merlin and, of course, Gandalf. A reverse kind of Gandalf character. So.
Exactly. Yes. So we, in the book club, again, if you guys want to, actually, I don't think we said this yet, but join our book club description below if you want to join and do monthly books with us. This was this month's book. How did you think that went, of their reaction and the overall? vibe of the book club.
I think most people really enjoyed this book.
Yeah.
Overall, it was either good to great. I don't think
Yes.
anyone was. I think there was a handful of people that didn't love the book, but overall, it went off really well.
Yeah.
Our discussion kind of tumbled into the theme of charisma versus
It's so often
manipulation,
that, yeah.
and so
Yeah.
that was interesting.
Yep.
But we'll have that conversation again on this video as well.
Yes, definitely. I just a couple shout outs here for Albert again picking this book. He gives it a 6 out of 5, it's even higher than I gave it. That breaks our scale. Emily loved the history and the theme with the book, legend making, how stories change, and Baron says exactly as you're saying too, Rich. If you're a history nerd, it's a must read, especially this period of history. He portrays it extremely well, extremely well.
Yeah,
Rich, what is your spoiler-free rating for the for book 1 of the World Lord Chronicles?
Book 1, I gave it a 3.5. I think it's a good book. Book is good.
That's a good score.
Yeah.
It's respectable.
What'd you give
5 out of 5. Floored me. This best battle sequences I've read. The package. It's the package. You ever go outside and you're going, oh, did Amazon deliver? He delivered. It's right there. It's the package. It gives you the fun. You think it's fun. Characters. Arthur. This is the portrayal of Arthur. My favorite Arthur I've ever seen. I discovered through reading this book that I love Arthurian tales. I used to think that, oh, that's British lame-o stuff. Who needs King Arthur? It's a sword and whatever.
Lame British people. Yeah. Am I right,
Give me
fellas?
Paul
Am I
Bunyan
right?
and the American axe lords. Give me some of that Paul Bunyan.
Give me some. I really need some of my Abe Lincoln the Vampire Hunter.
Exactly
That's
what I
what
was
I
thinking.
need.
And now I figured out I'm a British simp. I figured that out. Give me more of this. Oh, what's the best category? All of them. I would say if there is one that is, what would you say is the best? Because there are things that Bernard Cornwell does super well.
For me, the best is world building. I think
Top tier.
his setting and how he places this world, I was immersed completely into this world. So
Fair.
Amazing.
Fair.
What was your favorite?
Oh my God.
If you had to pick one.
Oh. I gotta say, okay, if I had to say one, Prose. If I have to say one, Prose, because my emotional highs come from that, the way the story was told was, I will be playing many scenes from this audiobook. You prepare yourselves, listeners. Okay. But if I had to say a next close second to that, all of the rest, all of them. But do you want to say anything else in our spoiler-free territory before we move on?
Yeah, I'll get across the odd experience I had reading this book. Normally, in most other books that you read, there normally is like a moment that sucks you in. It's like, okay, I'm invested. And then it's almost an exponential curve of enjoyment. Like maybe it doesn't grab you in the beginning, and then something happens, and you're like, all right, I'm into this book now. This was not that. I started off low investment, and it was an exact linear trajectory up. Every single part I enjoyed a proportional amount more. It wasn't exponential. I didn't just like suddenly love it. It was just every part was better. Where at the part 1, part 2, I'm going, maybe I'll get it. Maybe I won't read the second book. Maybe I will. I'm not sure. And then by the final part, I'm going, yeah, I'm reading book 2. Like that's what I'm doing. Of course.
Yeah.
But it was weird. It's a very strange experience of just like completely linear enjoyment.
The X and Y axis was just one step at a time.
Yeah. It was weird. I didn't it was just a strange thing in my head of thinking there was no moment where I really enjoyed this book. It just grew on me over time. Like just at one point I'm like, oh, I'm invested in these characters now. When did that happen? I don't remember when that happened, but I am now.
You didn't know when you started caring. There wasn't the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Huh. Yeah. That's a pretty fun way of explaining that too. Because even when finishing this book, I didn't go, "Oh, this is my instant top 10." I don't know if it's in my top. It's not my top 10, but as soon as I finished it, I didn't sit down and go, "Holy crap, what did I just read?" Mm-hmm. I just finished going, "Oh, that was awesome," and then the next day I said, "Oh yeah, that was awesome," and I kept saying it enough in my head. I went, "Oh, I just keep thinking about this book," and so even after the reading experience kept growing on me, I got to read this. that, again, check in the description below, all that good jazz. We'll go into spoilers now.
Time to go.
Spoiler warning for The Winter King. Tune off if you do not want to get spoiled for the book. Give you another couple seconds. Okay. All right. Emotional impact.
What did you give it?
5 out of 5 stars. Floored me.
I gave it a 3.75.
Really good.
Really good. Really good emotional impact on this one.
Solid. Well, what is he going for here? I mean, come on. It's clear.
I mean, he's going for excitement, right? It's an exciting book.
Yeah.
I would say somewhat because of the frame narrative style, the shock and surprise where you're not going to get a particularly shocking moment, because you know where the characters kind of end up. You generally know these kind of things. So it's more about the suspense, the atmosphere, the why. Like, you already know what's going to happen. Through this story, you're finding out why. And so, like, you're engaged, you're curious, like, how is this all going to fall apart?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Oh, what emotions did you get?
Give me that excitement. Give me that excitement. It is that level of excitement that I love out of those Red Rising books. It gives me that. And so the biggest moments for me were a lot of the battle sequences, of course, which the reason the book is also more than that, we'll get into with the plot and the backstory with this, besides it working thematically and with the story, the moments that he's able to write. This one line, for example, expresses what kind of feel I got throughout the book. And just reading the story of Durfel, who has found God, and talking about his past violence and looking up to King Arthur, and the legend of Arthur. And he says this, in talking in the present day, says, "I know now that there is no joy like the joy of serving Christ Jesus. But how do I miss the company of warriors?" Come on. It's that dueling id, ego, whatever they say in philosophy, of has found peace, but looking back on your past and knowing you enjoyed some of it, knowing that being in that thrill was something special. But the battle sequences, which we alluded to in the spoiler-free section. Sorry, you thought I was going to be playing a clip.
Yeah,
I'll be having clips after this. Yeah,
you let me know.
that was a shorter one, so I said it myself. But some of the top moments to bring up: Owen versus Arthur.
That was probably the first moment that, if there was a moment of like, oh, I get why people like Bernard Cornwall, it was that. There was a couple battle sequences before it where I'm like, this is good, but like,
yes,
I don't get what's super special. Arthur versus Owen. Oh man, the man knows how to write. The man knows how to write a battle scene.
Yes.
Oof. God, it was so good.
You have this character, Owen, who is using war for profit and is not this honorable man. And we see Arthur, from, especially earlier on, Durfel's perspective, being this more honorable man. And Owen's about to get away with slaughtering this group of people, and on his honor says he didn't do it. But Arthur knows that Owen did it, so he challenges him to this duel. And you see this absolute honorific rage out of Arthur, and just the brutality of him killing Owen, who was one of the 3 protectors of the now son of Uther. I'm gonna get these names butchered. Sorry, of Mildred, the new son who is a baby. Right, Owen was one of those protectors of the son. Mildred's the wrong name. Is it Mordred?
No, Mordred's the daughter.
Mordred.
King. Hold on a minute.
Oh, you got the character. Good.
I got character names. Do I have that one under here? No. Uther.
No, Uther was the king, and I got it here as well.
I don't have it.
Uther. We know. No, it's the new king, the baby king.
I know the baby. I don't know the baby king's name. It's like Moore something.
Yeah. Mordred, one of those 2 things, but was one of the protectors. But that right there, and also the other top moment of the final battle sequence that we get with the shield wall and being cornered, and Arthur trying to come save the day, unable to, and Merlin comes and actually saves the day. But these heart-wrenching, heartbeat. I was able to visualize everything because of his prose. He did such a great job at that. But every battle got me, even in the stuff that wasn't necessarily, hey, fight versus fight, but the Isle of the Dead, when going through and seeing all the people that have gone crazed and mad, and him tearing through. And finally, there was this description at one point, and I'll probably pull it up in the prose section, but there was this description at one point of Durfil was afraid and going, oh my God, look at all these crazed people, but got to a certain point where he was running through with his sword and so focused on getting to Nimue, getting to Nimue, that there was this switch where then the crazed people looked at him with fear as he was charging toward her. And just the way Bernard Corll is the man. He's a must read author for me now. But yeah, so those were some of the big moments. Were there any small, because I'm talking the exciting action, there's much more to appreciate. Do you want to pull me back, get me out of my testosterone filled head and soothe what was a nice political intrigue you got? Wasn't that some of the nice other stuff you got in there?
What I really enjoyed were the moments of all the druid moments. Especially very in the beginning of one, it's an interesting emotional moments throughout the book because you get to, I think it's fairly clear that or at least it's supposed to be, that most of the magic that the druids use is not real. It's clearly superstitious gobbledygook. However, because the characters see it as real, or at least most of them, are wary of druids and take their abilities seriously. All of the moments when the druids cast their magic is both funny and also impressive of their effects. Probably the early one is when Nimue is protecting Merlin's tower, and she comes out of his room just buck naked with a bird like tied in her hair, blood all over her face, and just like going crazy. And all the men, the dozen men just run in fear and just and hightail it out of the tower. And Durfil questions her, saying like, so that wasn't magic? You were it's just a facade, it's just a trick? And she said, I don't know. Small, tiny, naked girl against 12 heavily armed men. And the little naked girl won. So, I don't know. That seems pretty effective. Seems pretty powerful to me.
It seems like magic, right?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
If the results speak for themselves.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm wondering how much of the magic in that is, or how maybe Merlin would put it, would be, if you speak and then it becomes so, who cares the result? Who cares about the mechanism behind it? Who cares whether the magic's real? Your speaking invoked a change upon the world, and that's all that matters.
All that matters is how you're perceived, not actually if you have the magic.
Yeah, all that matters is the results.
Yeah.
And so because of Merlin's mystique and his image, when he comes onto the battlefield, one, it's just a well-written scene that you feel how powerful Merlin is. You look at it like, yeah, Merlin doesn't have it. Anyone could just come up and kind of stab him. Like, that's it. He's just an old man. However, every time he's in the scene, he has this gravitas that he could walk into a middle of a battlefield, active battle, and split the army in two and walk like unharmed. And he can just go where he wants and stop a battle. And it's pretty awesome. So does Merlin have magic? Maybe not. But he lives in a world, and he lives a life that whether he has magic or not almost doesn't matter. The effect is the same.
And the cool thing is we know Nimue doesn't have magic, or at least in that scene didn't have magic, but leaves us in the mystique of, okay, maybe he doesn't, maybe he does. Because it is still fantasy, and you're going, is there more truth to the fact that he has magic? We have yet to see anything crazy powerful. So we'll see as the series continues. But just the fact that his effect is the focus on it, and has so much effect that just parts the soldiers like they're the Red Sea and just walks right through them.
Those are really emotionally gripping scenes every time Merlin's in the scene.
Yes. And the buffoonery of him as well, of being in the library and then all of a sudden I'm going, I found it. Those are very cool. I also I guess, was there a moment where you're hooked into the story? Because you said you had a very slow linear progression. You didn't say the moment stuck out to you, but if you had to reflect, looking back, What was that moment?
It would probably be the Arthur Owen fight scene
Got it.
of I got to see a different side of Arthur. I'm kind of invested in Arthur's character now.
Mm.
And from then on, I'm interested in finding out more about him. Durfel, I don't think I was particularly invested in him as a character till maybe, honestly, with him and Lancelot.
Yep, that's where boom.
That's about where I was like, I'm enjoying Durfel's character quite a bit. I'm invested in it, especially after him going into the Isle of the Dead. I'm now more invested in his character. Before that, he was a vehicle to the story, mostly. How about you?
Yeah, he began to grow on me more in those Lancelot scenes when he went off and started to experience war.
Mm-hmm.
And with Lancelot's brother or half brother, became bros with him, became more friends with him. But Galahad, yeah. When Durfel was describing that he was beating Lancelot in front of everybody, just launching fists into him, pummeling Lancelot, which how true is that? Because he's writing the story. We'll get into that. Yeah.
That's a fun element of the story.
Yes. So I'll hold off for characters, but Durfel, I agree with you overall. He grew on me over time. However, he wasn't the feature.
Mm-hmm.
The feature were people that he was focusing on. And I think the other... Was there another big moment for you that wasn't battle, or is there a battle I missed? Is there something for you that was big, or why is your emotion not higher? What could it have done better for you?
I mean, what could it have done better? Ultimately,
or just wasn't for you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was a kind of slow start.
Yeah.
The characters, I think due to the time period especially, it's kind of hard to be particularly invested in these characters. Some of the horrific stuff they do in the horrific world they live in, it's hard to connect with them as human beings, but over time you do. So, and then overall, because of the frame narrative in its set, like I am 1 degree removed of invested, of just, I'm not as shocked, surprised. So like, I'm enjoying it. It's good, but I wasn't wowed or floored.
Got it. Do you not like frame narratives? Because you like it in other books. Is it something about this one just because of the time period plus frame narrative plus another element? What made it?
Frame narrative, because frame narrative often takes the surprise out, you normally have to add in tension or you give a good amount of mystery of the why. So you know what happens, but you don't know how it does or why it would happen. This, like, you kind of get that as well, but a little less so. I kind of know, from the very beginning to the end, you kind of know where it's all going for this book at least. And so there's not too much exploration other than like the investment comes from these characters and seeing them change over time.
Yeah, I think the tension for me comes from knowing Arthur becomes King Arthur and seeing how does he go from wanting to acquiesce and not be king whatsoever to slowly the ambition you see start to take hold of him. That why and going, what moments happen in Arthur's life to make him go from honorable to stampeding into the throne or falling into the throne at some certain point of how does that happen? Because obviously Sun Eater, no spoilers for Sun Eater, but chapter 1 is we know he destroys the sun. Chapter 1 of book 1 of Sun Eater. We know that. I haven't even read the book where he destroys the sun. We just know what happens by the end. But in this, you know that how does Hadrian get there? What changes with his psyche? Similar to Arthur in this way of what happens to Arthur and the political landscape around him to put him in that position. And that's where more of the thought-provoking element plays for me. Do you want to go into that? What did you give thought-provoking out of 5 stars?
I gave the thought-provokingness 3.
Neutral. Okay. I gave it a 5.
Okay.
Floored me.
All right. Well, let's have you start. What floored you about the message, the thought-provoking nature of this book?
So a couple things. All of it comes behind Arthur and his character motivations, the message behind him. So one of them that we talked about in the book club too was charisma and influence versus is it manipulation or selfishness, and that ambition, and also another theme which we'll dive into each of these, but peace versus justice. And all of those were done so freaking well where it changed the way I'm thinking about this benevolence or a leader who has good intentions in the first place, but where okay, breaking down, for example, to give some scenes here. So Arthur, with this theme of manipulation and selfishness versus the charisma and selflessness.
To give context,
Give some
Durfel
context.
being a loyal follower of Arthur, there are several moments where you see, from his perspective, Arthur says just the right thing to get people to be on his side, and people really fall in love with him. And from Durfel's point of view, early on, it could be seen as manipulative. Of Arthur knows the kind of effect he has on him, and he's just saying the right thing, whether he means it or not, to get an ally on his side.
For example,
Or is it charisma? Like, he's just a very likable guy, and he is genuine in his intentions toward Durfel and other characters.
right. For example, there is the scene where we find out he doesn't deny or claim faith to the two big factors and foes at play, Christians and the pagan gods. There's this background story behind the old gods and the new of Jesus Christ and the Christian God versus all these old gods. And Arthur doesn't take a stance. We hear Arthur stays aloof in that regard. And does he do that because he wants to maintain this image and control and have this influence? Is he not a coward in that way, but is he holding back for those selfish reasons, or because he has good motives of he wants peace? So can he claim all of this by peace, that he has these good motives and therefore can play both sides of the game and doesn't have to claim he doesn't believe in a god or believes in the pagans or the Christian God? And that's where it becomes into is he ambitious? What are his motives? And one of the big scenes where we kind of figured out where his head is at is after Nemoy's character is brutalized, raped, and cut out by one of the Gundlius.
Yeah.
After an attack by Gundlius. The horrific things to Nimoy happens. And Arthur comes and saves everybody. That doesn't save things from happening, but in post, Nimoy, everybody lives in the end, but doesn't seek justice against Nemoy's attacker. And he finds that's the honorable, it's the thing to strive forward more toward peace. That's how you get to that step of Arthur is just, hey, this is a fellow king, this is a fellow leader. Peace now, we're going to move on with our kingdoms uniting. But then you see, on the other hand, when it's something that triggers Arthur, and it's something Arthur wants. So, for example, he sees a beautiful woman, Guinevere. Well, he's going to do it because he feels that way. He just is going to go after Guinevere. And there was a line by Durfel where as he was seeing Arthur's relationship with Guinevere developed, he said, Arthur thought that his happiness should embrace the world. Arthur's just that feeling that whatever he is feeling, his happiness, everyone should be happy if he's happy. He feels that influence, the more influencing, charismatic he is, the more that other people will just absorb his feeling. The world should feel like he does. The world should work in this frame that he has where peace is possible because Arthur thinks it's possible. And in that cycle, we also see in the book how, I'm forgetting if Durfel says this or one character, but I think it is the Irish say this or something. In their lands, they say forgiveness is just giving your enemy another chance. Forgiveness is just a forgiven enemy is a forgiven enemy again, and a forgiven enemy again, and a forgiven enemy again. It's a cycle of how many times can you forgive your enemy before peace can only get you so far. So those major themes with Arthur's character of taking away that charismatic leader and asking yourself, or just when you do something that can come across as, hey, going across both aisles or saying something that is uniting. The uniter, that's usually looked upon as such a positive virtue of somebody that is able to look at both sides and able to be stalwart and command. And everybody loves Arthur. Everybody loves him for a reason. But if everybody does, at what point should you be suspicious? At what point do you give too much power in the hands of somebody who you think is altruistic? All of that, and just thinking of how I'm not a leader of anything in my life. I half lead this thing. I'm not even the leader of Tudor. But thinking of how much, when you think of your own actions, how much are you doing this out of true benevolence? and how much are you doing it because you want to expand and look a certain way. It's Arthur's all about looks. He is all about what he wants and this piece that he has in mind, and all about how he is perceived so he can get to this end goal. However, when there's things he wants, he'll do it. He'll do it immediately when it comes to wanting Guinevere, wanting others. But anyways, that big takeaway and all scrumptious, and I think the whole narrative weeds that in
all
so
the
freaking
thought-provoking
well.
nature of it, it comes down to me, the perception of magic is magic, and then Arthur. Those are the two things to think about.
Mm-hmm.
For me, Arthur is not like all that's perfectly valid. However, it's just not enough for me. I'm just kind of like everything else being just action, and Arthur is not in a ton of this book. There's a long stretches where Arthur is not really involved, and so I'm just So everything with
Shame.
The reason why I'm neutral is like everything with Durfel is like there's no thought-provoking nature at all with Durfel in this book. I'm positive there will be more in the future. I know it. There's plenty of little seeds set up here of like, oh, Durfel's going to have to go through some stuff, and he's actually going to have to make some real hard decisions. But for the most part, he's led around, has some interesting thoughts placed on it, on just him being a storyteller and how much is he manipulating this story. That's something interesting. But yeah, no, for Arthur, plenty there. I can't wait to read the next book and find out more about him. But how much, if this book was from Arthur's POV, would we get more from his own mind of how much he cares about his image? Because of course, being from Durfel's point of view, we just see outwardly. It seems like, because of course Arthur never says it, but does he care about his image, or does he care about being a good man?
That's why this needs to be from Durfel's point of view. Yeah. That's what makes it thought-provoking. That's what makes this so interesting, because we have to be able to judge through Durfel's eyes. And Durfel is also a judge of that. I think this is an Arthurian story, so it is going to come down to Arthur. And in the same way, The Great Gatsby is Gatsby's story of you are an onlooker. And so Durfel, his message, the things he has to think about is what we have to think about too, of he obviously follows Arthur. And he is aware and acknowledges throughout scenes of, hey, Arthur remembered my name and asked me what I thought. There was a scene where Arthur asked me what I thought on this very important matter. What? Wow. That is how charismatic this guy is. He made me feel seen. And he puts an aside there of, he probably does this to everybody because he wants to have this loyalty to Arthur. And so he acknowledges that, but at the same time is charmed. He acknowledges, okay, my leg could be being pulled. I'm saying being my leg could be being pulled right now. However, I'm falling for the charm. He is this very, very suave and enigmatic leader.
Well, if you want to connect the two themes here of Arthur's, if you were consider it like magic, of whether Merlin and Nimue, whether their magic is real or not, almost doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Because of the effect that their magic has on the world. It's the same thing with Arthur, of whether Arthur is being charismatic or manipulative ultimately doesn't matter because of the effect he has on the world. Is his intentions real? Is it fake? Is it manipulated? Is it calculated? Almost doesn't matter because the effect is the same.
Exactly. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that on top of that is Arthur does a couple things as well on the side where he has a lot of oaths and he has a lot of promises
that he mostly breaks.
And has to send Durfel to go on that whole journey to the Franks because he promised them. And there's that through line, and also this peace versus justice thing of going back to our peace and justice antonyms. What do you think about that? And what did this story have to say? Are peace and justice antonyms?
I mean, they're definitely not the same. Often you can have peace with evil, but ultimately that's often a temporary solution. And do you want peace with evil? People can, I think, see Christian faith as very passive and hippie-like, of like, the common like turn the other cheek. But often it's a very active religion in and of itself of you should act. There is no peace with evil. You should fight evil. You don't fight. Fight sin, fight evil, fight the devil. All these things. That there is something to fight for. Not fighting is not necessarily always good, and Arthur clearly knows
You're using
this.
fight in the moral sense too of
Fight
inner
disagree.
demons.
Or in person.
Hmm.
There are plenty of reasons to pick up a sword and fight. If there is evil in the world, there's definitely reasons to fight. There's
The church obviously changes throughout times. If there's the Crusades at one point, and then, but you also have, in modern sense too, peace and mercy is very much associated with Christian faith, Catholicism in general. But
yeah. There's also the difference between fighting the sin, but not forgiving the sinner. But often there are causes to pick up arms and fight for. And Arthur, several times in the early parts of the book, errs on the side of peace and thinks that acquiescing to an enemy will ultimately make that enemy favor you, and then that you'll stop the fighting. And throughout this book, he kind of learns that, I don't know, if you leave Gofefid and if you get Gofefid and you just keep letting him live, he's just gonna get his arms again and then fight you again. You're not going to have peace.
and King Gofefid is the king whose army cut off, and daughter he was to wed.
Yeah,
Sinwin, I believe her name is, and
I think it's something interesting to think about. Of course, in this book, the war between kings of Britain was Arthur's fault completely. 100% is because he pissed off Gofefid, and by basically shutting and embarrassing his daughter by running off with another woman right before their marriage.
As well, right?
This lesser woman. However, I think it is fair to kind of look at would Gofefid actually have just would this war have even happened if in the moment Arthur, instead of just cutting off the arm, cut off the head and just ended the enemy? Or when you kind of look at it, even if Arthur didn't marry
Sinwin, or
if he married Caiwin, would Gofefid still have gone to war eventually because of his anger toward Arthur? Possibly. I don't know. I think it's at least fair to say. So, same thing with Gunlius. Gunlius probably should have killed, but didn't, and then Gunlius went on to cause even more problems. So,
emotional scene I forgot to mention is the end justice. The justice we get at the end with killing both Nemoy and Durfal's enemies.
Yeah.
And in that scene too, in the end, justice was served to them. And the whole book's themes all encapsulate towards this thing of peace versus justice, and this charisma versus selfishness, this charm, that effect of whether it's magic or person's ambitions. Does the effect just matter? Is that all? How much does the intent play into this, and how the pawns move on this world, especially with the battle, the pagans versus the Christians, not being in direct battle. We don't see the Christians fighting against the pagans, but again encapsulating that theme of I love that. And on top of that, the thing that was a sugar on top for me of the thought-provoking section was how historically accurate this was. Of how cool that I was learning this throughout the book club, but the saddles weren't invented yet. Straps, and you didn't sit on a horse with saddles, and so several times throughout this book, Durfal's just falling off of the horse, and all of it is so extremely historically accurate, especially how the battle formations happen. And we get a small description. This is just a microcosm of what Bernard Cornwell does, but explaining how the shield wall works and stabbing with the pointy end, as Jon Snow would say, stabbing with the pointy end, and describing why you have these different types of swords and why the Romans didn't have long spears, but rather sharp swords to point and stick. And all of this getting you sucked in, which we'll talk more world building of getting you into that atmosphere, but loved it all.
Fantastic.
Do you want to go on to characters?
Yeah. Let's move on.
All right. What did you give characters out of 5 stars?
Characters overall, I gave a 3.5.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
If this was only the Arthur Arthur channel. Like,
Arthur.com.
if that was it, be much higher. But
Yeah.
it is Durfel's book too.
I get you.
And I only was invested in him by the end.
That's
Like
fair.
So it's like,
That's fair. 5 stars for me. Floored me. We talked a lot about Arthur. You want to finish up with him because I have one thing that to add on to this character here.
sure.
We're saying why this character, what flaws, wants, needs, motivations, what makes him so irreplaceable. You obviously your favorite character is Arthur, I presume. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
The thing that was pointed out to me in the book club as well, which makes sense of why does he act the way he acts and wants this loyalty so badly. Of obviously he's a bastard himself and grew up in a family where his own father and mother weren't loyal to one another. So he has this trauma or whatever have you from his childhood of wanting
He's
issues.
got mommy issues.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Severe. So
Severe.
he needs that loyalty. But give us some more backstory of what Arthur, because we went so much into him with the thought-provokingness, but what else that we can gather from his motivations or how he worked?
Well, one of the more poignant examples of one of Arthur's flaws being, afraid of disloyalty, afraid of letting people go and allowing others to some degree of freedom. Like he does have a bit of a controlling nature of people in his circle. And now most of the time it comes through just he's charismatic, he's the leader, people want to do what he says anyway. But when it comes to the mother of his 2 children, this slave woman, ultimately, one, he has a slave woman with him. Strike one there. Okay. Yes, obviously, slavery bad. Got that. Now we're going into, 300?
400 to 600 AD, yeah.
All right, now we're in this time period where slavery is far more commonplace. What is uniquely bad with Arthur is he doesn't have it. He does treat her with some degree of reverence. It is the mother of his children. He seems to treat her big, heavy air quotes well comparatively to, Gunlius would treat a slave. But I think it says something that the mother of his children is not a free woman, but a slave. And when he does marry Guinevere, that he doesn't just release the slave woman. He still keeps her around, like forces her to stay in a certain village away. So to satisfy Guinevere, he distances himself from her, but he also won't let this slave go. And because he's afraid that she'll take his kids away and run himself. So there's this great degree of fear of disloyalty, fear of abandonment that he holds her that way.
Yeah. You see how a man treats his family. It says a lot about a man. And you look at Arthur as well and having this impulsiveness to him, this impulsiveness and rage, which we see in the impulsiveness comes from just marrying Guinevere. I love it first sight. I love it several sights. And we see the rage come out when fighting Owen, but also at the end, which we talked about the final battle sequence, but Arthur hearing the insults flown across by King Gryffindor. By King Gofifid. It looks like Gryffindor on page. I guess kept thinking Gryffindor. But King Gofifid is throwing insults saying, hey, Guinevere is a whoreslut with everybody in our entire unit, is saying all the worst things that you can possibly say. And King Arthur storms out of there with this insane rage to him of someone tell me that's not true. One of you stand by his words. Stand by our king's words. And is just demanding and commanding everybody to say that's not true. Or if it's true, fight me right now and I'll prove you it isn't. But in all these scenes, you see Arthur can slip at any moment, or just you can get on his nerves. He has extreme impulsiveness and is emotional. And so you see how he's been able to, when he is calm, he is the most charismatic you can be, but that can get swept right under you in the flash of a few insults. Well, even if they're horrible insults, it could still happen. And if he thinks the world should function the way that his mind conjures. For example, peace, or whether if he's happy with Guinevere, then of course everybody should be happy because he's happy. His peace should embrace the world. Of Owen needing to seek justice, or him wanting Owen to seek justice, he felt emotionally that was the right thing to do. That in order to have peace, and so that this other kingdom doesn't. This other kingdom was upset and wanted justice for their dozens of people dying. Sorry if I'm saying kingdom; it might just be a town, but
that scene in particular.
No,
it's an argument of Arthur was fighting for Owen to get justice for Owen. However, after the fight, he says like, "Hey, look, I know that." He fought Owen, right?
Yeah,
fought Owen, and it was like for justice. But after the fight, he said like, Owen is a brute and like actually wouldn't have protected the realm. Like we can't be squabbling with each other. We need one leader. So did he fight Owen for the justice of the murdered children, or did he do it to actually just take an enemy out?
No, you're right. It's not justice. It seems like justice. It's perceived as justice.
He gives justice when it's cheap.
Exactly. And he gives justice when it serves peace that he thinks is peace. His motives are not justice.
When it serves him, he will give justice. When he thinks it won't serve him, he will do awful things and let awful people go for the sake of his peace.
Gunlius.
Yeah.
Yeah. King Gorfifid.
But the minute at the end of the battle scene, the final battle, Arthur does the knightly king thing of telling him like, hey, we have won and we're not going to sack your army. You're going to be able to leave here with your possessions and your weapons, which normally doesn't happen. Normally, like, no, we get to take everything from you. Also, your women and children, like, and we'll take them as slaves, like, and we're going to slaughter most of you anyway. Like, that's what normally would happen. And Arthur's like, for the sake of peace, you all get to go home. Like, the remaining that are still alive, you get to go home. But after Guinevere was insulted, all of that was true. However, you, son of Gofefid, give me an oath right now on your father's on your father's grave that he was lying. That Guinevere is not everything that your father said he was. So he was willing to, like, hey, I'm going to do the nice, peaceful thing of letting everyone go. Except for one thing.
Except for this.
And that, like,
it matters
if you don't personally validate this, I will slaughter you all. And also the son of Gofefid was like, had a big pause there because he, set up that he was fairly honorable, also friends with Arthur. And the fact that he had to hesitate to give that oath of like, nope, my father lied, to me says that his father probably exaggerated the truth, but didn't lie. And the son knew it. And he had to lie on his oath to save his men's lives. So, yeah, justice for me and not for these.
Yes.
Kind of Arthur's.
Arthur is certainly
MO.
You see Arthur in these other tales, which you're not well read in Arthurian tales either. I mean,
no, not really.
But
not well read in them.
Yeah. You see other Arthurian tales, from my understanding, maybe this is your understanding too, he's looked at as this example, this paragon of honor, and just, this is the King Arthur. He is an example to look up to only. And these virtues, and each of his round table, Lancelot and others, have other virtues that you look up to in this kingly regard and this knightly vigor. And talking about Lancelot was the other top tier character.
Yeah, if I had to pick a different character as my favorite, it would be Lancelot. I loved. He was lovely. You could just tell that this was the character most exaggerated by Derfel.
Yes.
Like, by far, he's the most unrealistic character in this entire narrative. Like, not even close. Of like, the fact that he's introduced with Lancelot basically calls him a child to his face, and then Derfel tells him, if you call me a child one more time, I'm going to beat your head in. And then Lancelot just immediately like, No, you're not, child. Durfel starts beating his head into a wall.
Mhm.
And then goes, now, what'd you want to call me? Lancelot, blood streaming down his face and completely beaten up, goes, child. It's like, what the hell? No. He continues to beat him. It's like, no one's that dumb. No one. Like,
I trust Durfel's tale. This is historically accurate.
So ridiculous. Of like, one, he's supposed to be so cowardly. Like, he's so cowardly. He never fights a battle. He always, weasels out of a fight. He, pretends he got hurt. All these cowardly things. But when he's being beaten to a pulp and told to submit, he like bravely, defiantly goes like, yo, fuck you. I'm not gonna kowtow to you.
I was just kind of honorable going, oh man, he's still calling him a child. Damn, he's really going there.
Beaten to the face, he'll still call him a child. Like he stuck to his guns, but like a petulant child. It's wild. Lancelot is such a funnily inaccurate character. I like to believe with Durfel telling this story, probably he's right about Lancelot being a bit slimy and, spreading these wild tales about him. Lancelot ultimately being not everything he says he is.
Mm.
But in Durfel's portrayal, when you see him, it's just so over the top douchebaggery. And that's exaggerated, and I love it.
Lancelot has this way that I want to make sure I'm getting right. Adam from our Patreon had this great example to say if Arthur is manipulative with nobility, Lancelot is manipulative with no nobility. So the reason he's more despisable is just he doesn't have the extra charm that Arthur does, especially because Lancelot, as described by Durfel, says that Lancelot isn't actually this knight that participates in battles or has any honor. It's just he pays off the poets. And the poets write stories about how cool the shit Lancelot is, and that's why Lancelot has all these admirable stories. So don't listen. He's rejecting other historical sources of what they'll say about Lancelot. Here's what Lancelot's really like. And he's saying how throughout all these battles that he fought with Lancelot's half-brother, Lancelot was at none of them. He would show up at the very end, and he would try to take some credit. He would go and then say, and then, this was the best detail as well of Lancelot's character, goes back, and Lancelot gives Durfel credit at a certain point for participating in the battles or for being the hero of one of the battles. Gives Durfel some credit, and Durfel looks at that and goes, he's only giving me credit so that he looks good for giving me credits. And just the extra layer of the manipulation of Durfel could never look at Lancelot in a good or positive way. But also, I could see that even if there's exaggerations, it's probably exaggerations of truth from Durfel's point of view.
It's probably there is some truth to it, but then you add on that Arthur tells Durfel that he plans on, after the battle, if everything goes well, he plans on marrying Kywin to Lancelot.
Yeah.
And Durfel is in love with Kywin.
Yes.
And so, I wonder if that's a factor in Durfel's perception of Lancelot.
Yes.
I am just loving the petty manipulation of this story by Durfel. That's my favorite. Yeah, no, screw everything else. That's my favorite part of the story.
Yes.
But more so than the battles. I love Lancelot. Lancelot is hilarious.
That's what makes Durfel fun for me too. Of that aspect of it, you could see his own manipulation of the story, but also from Durfel's point of view, the cool thing is seeing how he begins the story. We know he's found faith, and you see him get inducted into this Mithras society of sorts. I believe I'm saying that right. This
Mithras,
Mithras of this brotherhood in arms, and you see him engage in his first battle. You see him starting to follow Arthur. You see him engage in bloodier battles, go to the Isle of the Dead. By the end of the story, you see him wreak very deserved justice against the person who tried to kill him and killed his mother. Maybe not killed. Maybe, we don't know. Right? That wasn't confirmed.
Definitely raped his mother.
Yes, did awful things to his family, mother, and did everything bad you could imagine to him in his life. The only reason that Durfel survived was because he was thrown into the pit. But oh, miraculously survived, so he must be chosen, or however it was.
Basically,
framed.
this druid created a death pit with spikes and was sacrificing to this one pagan god and threw in a bunch of people, including Durful. Durful miraculously just didn't hit any of the spikes.
Made
when
it out.
Came in, and he came out. And to the pagan magic, because he tried to sacrifice someone to a god using this death pit, and he failed, and he didn't actually complete the sacrifice. That means that it hit the druid's life is in Durful's hands because of this god. Like, you pissed off the god that you made a sacrifice and ultimately didn't actually do it. And so now Durful can kill the druid with no consequences.
Yes.
Negates all magic. Negates all of my magic charms and spells and things.
You can no longer block me with, I don't know, Magic the Gathering terms. I collected Magic the Gathering for a long time.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. I did for a couple years, but I never had people to play with. I didn't have many friends.
Real sad.
So I had thousands and thousands of cards. Closets full. I still do, back at my dad's house. They're still in the closet. And
that's where they shall remain.
Yep. Actually, I think the only person I ever played with was my dad, which was great. It was so wholesome. He played with me. We had a lot of fun. He taught me how to play Magic the Gathering. I just didn't have other friends to play with.
Huh. Since you opened up, I collected Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
Did you have friends to play with?
I did.
Oh, see.
That's why I had them. As soon as I didn't have friends that had Yu-Gi-Oh anymore, all the cards went away.
Yeah. The thing is, I obviously I had friends, but I didn't have friends that also played Magic the Gathering. Nobody was also into that, because you have to have, again, the reason we have this podcast is we have a substantial friend group, more than we should have in our 20s.
Yeah,
more
true.
Like, we gotta start trimming, but we'll trim those edges.
We
eventually.
do have too many friends in the friend group.
We'll get it handled, but
it makes group trips difficult.
It does, yes. So then when we've 10 dudes in Iceland in a hot tub. Yeah, that's wonderful. That's some top tier entertainment.
That was a formative moment of like, things need to change. I don't want this to be the same.
If you think why the podcast keeps upgrading is because we're trying to go further from that. We're trying to go. Our goal one day I see a world I dream where 9 men will be in a hot tub.
That was a core moment for me of like, stuff needs to change.
Yes. But essentially the magic battle going back and forth. I don't know how we got onto that point. Oh, Durful.
Yeah.
And Durful's up, set up perfectly, and how he miraculously survived that. So this whole time, you don't see this rage or anger he has against the druid, really. It is mentioned, and you see kind of in that final sequence, it all comes to its conclusion. But Durful is, again, he's our narrator. He's not our Gatsby. He's not our Arthur, but I think does the job really well of setting up the story. Otherwise, we have Merlin, who's probably the next big one to mention, and you were already talking about his aura.
Oh, no. You get introduced to Merlin pretty late into the book of Merlin is wearing this disguise when Durful goes to this city, basically, city in France to uphold Arthur's oath to this king that he would protect him. And ultimately Arthur fails to fulfill his oath. So Durful's there to step up. And he goes into the city and there's this just weird guy in the library that's kind of insulting everyone.
He's a hipster.
He's a hipster.
Yeah.
He's a hippie. And we're going like, all right, fine. And then we later find out actually that's Merlin in disguise. And Durful has to drag him out of there and saves Merlin. And Merlin goes like, I had it all under control. He did not have it under control. He was about to be dead. But because I don't think the Franks were gonna respect Merlin's magic
Probably
at
not.
all.
Probably not.
At all. They'd be like, "What language are you speaking?" And then just kill him. Like they would not have recognized Merlin's magic. But so Durful saves Merlin, and man, Merlin's just an asshole like the entire time. But he then like actually does some nice things for Durfel, and then he does some awful things. And it's like, he is not the best guy, clearly, throughout this story. But when he comes on scene to save the day, it's pretty darn hype. It's pretty great.
He has his own thing going on where he's trying to bring back the old gods, and he was looking for the letter of, what is it, the something of Britain, the rule of Britain, the history, the law. Well, he was looking for that.
The lost magic of Britain.
Yeah, lost magic of Britain. And he was looking for that, and he's got another plot going on. Merlin is above this right now. He's not focused on the petty squabbles. He has something else he's thinking about. And the most we see out of Merlin and know about Merlin is through Nemoy's point of view as well, of Nemoy, who her character, her motivation from the beginning or from the get-go is she's a follower of Merlin and believes in the old gods. And on top of that is an apprentice of Merlin. And with her apprenticeship, you talked about the scene already of her putting on the bet.
Emphasis of not maybe the best of guys, of like this puts you in the setting of 400 AC, but Nimue is also Merlin's lover as well. And when Nimue is like 12 or 10, something like that, and so we're already off to not the best start of like liking Merlin, but beside that, jeez, okay, that's also an emphasis of this book is like, beside the rape, slavery, and pedophilia.
That's 4.
I got like, and also the random killing and murdering and all that stuff.
No,
like,
that's okay. Yeah.
That's you take that out of the way, and then you look at the characters and go like, oh yeah, I really like these characters. I love Merlin. He's such an interesting character. Beside the pedophilia and the rape and all that other stuff. Well, that's just the nature of this book and the setting. It's going to be real uncomfortable.
Maybe we have different
people.
frameworks. Is what I'm saying. Like, these are interesting characters.
Exactly.
These are the characters well done? Do they feel irreplaceable? Do they feel one of a kind? And so far for Arthur, Lancelot, Merlin, all these characters feel like the embodiment of these legends. Why I think this gets the points for me, where this gets so much credit is, obviously, these are characters that are in so many stories and mythos of, you have this vision of Arthur, you have this vision of Merlin. This is now who I envision them as. I've seen Arthurian movies. I haven't read a lot of Arthurian books, but as I think about these characters now, this will be ingrained for me of who Merlin is as a person.
It definitely gives you the feeling of this is what the legend was based off of.
Supposed to be.
It feels more like the truth.
It does.
Because obviously it isn't the truth,
yes,
but it
is.
Feels like it.
No, it is. It's historical nonfiction. Come on. We've just read a biography. That is the cool thing of, obviously the caveats with the characters, but you have
just want to get that out of the way of like, talk about these characters is interesting. And at a certain point, maybe that's why I became more invested in the characters as it went on. Because at the very beginning, it's kind of like just a culture shock of like, oof, God, these people are a little,
that's
little
fantasy.
rapey. And then you like kind of just get sucked into the world, and then you go like, your mind starts to reframe around this, historical world. So you're sucked into the world itself. And in many ways, like these horrors and these things kind of fall to the background of like, it just is. And it doesn't suck you out as much.
Yeah, it's like a Game of Thrones. Like you look at a Game of Thrones character, it's like, oh, okay, yes, incest. All these bad things exist.
That's
incest,
why you have
killing,
That's why you have like Game of Thrones does it, but also the Winter King has it. There's all the people are pretty awful, but then there's more awful people. And so you have that comparison of like, it can be worse.
Yeah, look, these are the better.
These are the better of the awful people.
Except in Game of Thrones, you have actually genuinely good people too. Yeah. And in that sense, with Nemoy, she wants to return with the old gods, apprentice of Merlin, sleeps with Merlin, and you also have this her immediate inciting incident is being raped and brutalized by Gunlius. And from then on out, just wants that revenge. is dead set on that and seeks it. And her and Durfal's interplay is really interesting throughout the book too. Of Durfal, you see, ends up the love of his life is Caiwen, but you see how nonchalant Nimoy is about her life and sexuality. For example, she's completely naked at one point in one scene, and Durfal's walks in. Whoa, oh my god! And she's going, "What are you talking about? What's your issue?" She has this matter of fact, cut to the chase, and also seems to have obviously a rigid view of things, but knows what she wants. Is very despite her trauma, is focused, dead set, and instead of dwelling on things that are obviously awful, just a very active character, a very get the move on character, if I'm saying that in the right words.
Also, in many ways, compare her manipulation of relationships to Arthur. In many ways, from the beginning, Nimue knows that Durfal loves her.
Mm-hmm.
And she does not reciprocate. She likes it, but she has other ambitions, and that's not it. She likes Durfal well enough, like friendly, that there is a relationship between the two. She doesn't hate him, likes him, but will never be what he wants from her. And pretty early on, she makes this like blood pact with him of like, when the time calls, like, I'm gonna need you. There's almost something far more honest about her relationship with Durfal compared to Durfal's relationship with Arthur. Nimue gains a certain degree of loyalty from Durfal and never really promises anything in return. She doesn't manipulate him. She just like asks things from him and says like, I will need you for this. Help me. And like, you're going to be... She never promises something that she couldn't deliver on. She never really... I don't know. There's a degree of honesty in her relationship with Durfal that I
it's
found
straightforward.
Yeah. She's just incredibly straightforward.
Yeah. She doesn't try to have a facade or mask things of what her true intentions are. She wears it on her sleeve of this is
the one
this
moment
is exactly my want.
After the Isle of the Dead and she's recovering.
Yeah.
Her and Durfal kind of have a moment of pretend of what their life could be.
Right.
I don't really see that as like her manipulating him. It's like she's in recovery and has a moment of weakness of her resolve for her ambitions and going like, oh, this is what our life really could be if I didn't desire to bring back the old gods. If I didn't have this mission, this is what we could have. So I don't see that as manipulation, but I found their relationship interesting.
Awesome. There's obviously your other characters, Guinevere, Lord Gofifid, Morgan and Sabile, Uther, like King Uther and the baby, all these side characters that we didn't get tons of, but are mentioned in the story that we'll get expanded on later. Owen, seeking war for profit, he was that the initial knight that was followed by Durfal and ended up dying to Arthur's sword. And I think we covered him enough too. But anything else with characters before we go on to the plot?
Lastly, Guinevere.
Yes.
What do you think of her?
Of course,
character?
Guinevere. Yeah, Guinevere's character was interesting because Arthur falls in love with her, and you see love at first sight. You just say, okay, he sees Guinevere, this redheaded, not as Durfal describes her, not the most beautiful or stunning woman in the world, just good looking, of course, but nothing crazy. So, is it worth ending everything for Guinevere, this piece? Now, in Arthur's head, of course, when he ends up with Guinevere, he thinks everything's just going to be okay because he's in his head. So, Guinevere's character has a conversation with Durfal about Arthur's ambition. This is where you start to figure out she wants to push him more in the way of
being the king
and taking that reign. She finds that more desirable, and she knows he has all this ambition. And when talking with her, Durfal explains how he kind of sees how Arthur was able to fall in love with her, but she is clearly saying more to Arthur and behind the scenes than we get or can see because we're looking at it from Durfal's point of view. But interesting is what role does she have to play and influence, because she has a lot of influence in Arthur. With that being said, we didn't mention how Arthur does acknowledge and looks at his relationship with Guinevere. He has an aside and says, Well, yeah, it did lead to this war, and he does acknowledge and seems to have a moment of maybe not regrets but reflection that quick impulsive decision did lead to this war with Gorfifid.
He doesn't regret it, but he does feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly,
Yeah.
he's like, I know that I'm the reason why the biggest war between Britain occurred, and I'm the one fighting for peace, and like I caused the biggest war.
Yeah. And what do you think, Guinevere? She has that. We get a little snippets of her with Derfel because King Arthur sends him to her.
Oh, she's top class manipulator.
Yeah.
She's clearly has probably more ambition than Arthur, and Arthur has quite a bit.
Mhm.
And she is manipulative. She's kind of petty. Almost everything is negative from Derfel's point of view. Not absurdly so, like it would be from like Lancelot.
Mm-hmm.
But most of his perspective is negative. And there's just seems to be the feel of maybe she kind of likes Arthur, but Arthur clearly loves her. And she is using him to get what she wants.
Gotcha. Yeah.
That's my feel of the character right now. We may find out differently as the books go on.
Yeah.
And how this interpretation of Guinevere will be.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm the exciting moments going forward. Sorry?
There's also all the stuff with the moon goddess thing that she follows.
Isis. Yeah.
And just
What's that all
the
about?
other followers in that whole group kind of,
Yeah.
I think, gives some credence to all the stuff that Gofef had said about her. Of like, it probably is true.
Right.
It's my guess.
Maybe. I have no idea how to take it. But I do know the character intrigue at this point, so I feel like I understand them. And also going to what moments happen. Why does Arthur eventually become king? We know he comes king. How else? How? What happens going forward? How does Derfel find faith and find God? And those are the two characters. We know their endings, of course. We know where Derfel ends. We know where King Arthur maybe not ends, but we know he becomes king.
Also, there's a moment I'm kind of looking forward to of early in the book. Derfel and Nimue have like this shared scar on their hand, and it's like when as so long as you hold this scar, like when I call, you will come to my aid.
Mm-hmm.
And then we find out in the future, Derfel no longer has that hand. So I'm waiting for the moment.
Why?
The call for aid comes and he does not go to her. That's what I take that meaning from.
And
so
has
I'm
to
waiting
cut off his hand because
either he loses, like it's coincidental.
Maybe
he loses his hand, then she calls and he doesn't come, and then
it's symbolic.
Yeah,
maybe
symbolic
it's symbolic
of like the failed oath.
Okay, I could see that.
That's how I see
you
it.
See it
like,
symbolic.
At some point, he is going to fail Nimue in some way.
Yeah, setting that up in the sense that there are. Yeah, I took it as in maybe there's a consequence to. Okay, I see. It's not that he gets his hand shut off because he doesn't do that. More so that it is just a symbol for him failing her. Or do you think there's a point where he cuts off his own hand? Because that could be a possibility.
He believes in the magic where Nimue does something so awful and tries to bring him to her side. And he goes, I will not be compelled by you and your magic.
Maybe his turning to faith. That could be the moment. Maybe that's my prediction of in the next couple books. Could be so off. But him finding God and him finding faith is something to do with him cutting his hand off.
I do think it won't be any of that directly. I think it will be like he will lose it in a battle, and then shortly thereafter he will fail to protect Nimue, or Nimue will call on him to do something. And ultimately she'll kind of remind him of the oath, and then he'll look down at his hand, he lost it.
That's also
and maybe
likely.
It'll be a call to faith of like, this moment was coming, and God took my hand, so I would not be compelled to follow Nimue even further.
That's a possibility.
I don't know. That I'm assuming something like this scene is going to happen, and I'm looking forward to that.
Plot time then. Let's get into it. What'd you give out of 5 stars?
Oop. My screen.
I can give mine first. What was your pointers?
Go
up?
ahead.
I gave a 4.5 stars. Spectacular plot.
Damn, I gave it a 3.75. Really good plot.
Really good plot. Solid. Now, there's two big plots going on here. The A plot, B plot is we have A plot of King is dead. The King Uther brings everybody together in the beginning of the book and says, hey, you all swear fealty to my son, Mordred. I think we got the name. My baby son, Mordred, who is crippled, has an issue with him. It did not come out completely... is it a leg, a stumped leg?
He has a twisted foot.
Twisted foot, yeah. And so that occurs, gets people to swear fealty. King does die, and now there's a power vacuum of sorts. So it's set up in that A plot is, can there maintain peace in the kingdom? We obviously see Arthur trying to maintain that peace, well, his idea of peace. While that's going on, the B plot, the overarching story, which will probably pull us through as well throughout the next two books, is whatever the hell Merlin's doing with the magic and the gods of the Christian versus the pagan, and what is Merlin the Moy? What are they plotting? What is the end goal here? What is being so sidetracked? And what are Merlin's intentions? Well, we know what he wants. But
it also shows why that A and B plot shows why Durfel is the main character.
Yes.
Because Arthur is not really involved in Merlin's plot not to a great degree. And so if we were to follow Arthur, we wouldn't really get much of Merlin and get to follow and see that perspective, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Durfel is smack dab in the middle of he was taken in by Merlin. He has this relationship with Nimue, but also this relationship with Arthur. And so he's the perfect man to be able to tell both stories.
Yes. And he is an unreliable narrator, although you can trust him more than most narrators. I think though he has his twist on the story.
It was cute in the beginning of that first like the charge scene of like the battle when they're fleeing Gunlius. When they're fleeing from Gunlius and trying to get help, and then Arthur comes and saves the day. We get Durfel in the future telling us, like, going, okay, look, I'm learning my lesson. I'm told I actually have to tell a story here and not just give a accounting of facts. So I spiced up the story a bit. We knew that Arthur was coming. We saw this, like, he didn't just come out of nowhere. We knew where we were charging. We knew where we were running to. It wasn't a mad dash. So like he was changed. You could tell, like, oh, I'm changing some of this story for dramatic effect for the story, but he at least acknowledges it in the very beginning,
which makes it cool to go, okay, you got that moment of, and King Arthur returns, and you feel that, and it is explained of that added drama, the melodrama, again, fitting so well with the plot of making it make sense that this feels as if it is the true story of King Arthur, because it almost feels as if you're in on the joke, and not that it's a joke, but you feel as if you're in on the story with Durfel, because you're getting the true perspective of, you're even getting his thoughts of his biased narrative, where you know he has his own types of motivations. Because you get in this book, there's 5 parts it's broken down into. It's part 1 is the Winter King, part 2 is the Princess Bride, part 3 is the Return of Merlin, part 4 is the Isle of the Dead, and part 5 is the Shield Wall. And that setup that we just discussed in the Winter King was how the book starts, of the King Uther brings everybody together and wants people to swear fealty to his son. And you get the immediate, it also sets up that the lie behind what Durfel is doing, writing down the story in the first place. He has to lie to a fellow bishop, or he has to lie to this bishop as if he's writing the story of Jesus Christ, just so that he can put this down, because, well, luckily the bishop doesn't understand Saxon, which we didn't talk about. Did we say this word Saxon once yet?
Not once.
I don't think we did, because that's another thing. The Saxons who...
The reason why Arthur is fighting so hard for peace between Britons is he's like, hey, look, our enemy should not be each other. Our enemy is the Saxons. They are going to try and take over, and we need unity to be able to defend against the Saxons.
That's why there's this pressure. Yeah. And that is how the book's set up. Did you feel any other type of promise? What were you promised at the beginning? What was the setup of the book to you?
Being the Winter King, we get the teasing of, Arthur's story. We get from the beginning the relationship between Durfel and the druid that tried to kill him and we think killed his mother. And then, of course, that's paid off by the end of this book. The rest is, I think, from the very beginning, I think he doesn't really set you up a lot with where this book will particularly end. We just know this is the story of Arthur. That's why like every part just kind of is like, and then this happens. And then this is the next part. And then we finally stop at a very nice point. But there's no
through line.
There's no like, and therefore it's each part is, and then this is the next exciting sequence of it's just constantly.
Really?
Yeah, I find it more of because Durfel is telling Arthur's story. He's telling of the events that is most closely related to Arthur. And so there's good stretches of time where he's doing something interesting, but it's not his story that he's telling. So it skips that part. And it's like, let's skip to the next part. Next time I was with Arthur, basically. So yeah.
Which part bothered you there?
It didn't bother me particularly.
Which one felt like the and then to you?
Oh, I mean, between every single one, right? I mean, first we're
like the going to the Franks, that type of stuff, and then going to Isle of Dead. Each part being a snippet of this story.
A little bit.
Okay, I felt
I didn't mind it. Though.
Yeah,
that's
no,
again. I'm saying just how it was structured and the feeling it gave.
Okay,
I don't particularly dislike that for this story.
Got it.
Maybe I liked each subsequent part more than the last.
Yes, it kept that lateral.
So
no, not lateral.
My least favorite was
linear movement.
The Winter King. Fine setup, I guess, but my favorite is definitely the latter.
The shield wall.
Yeah, that was my favorite one.
I think the book was promising that we set up with Durfel of one. We know, okay, B story. We know King Arthur. This is about him, how that comes to be. But first thing it's setting up is because there is a fracture of the old king is dead and Britain is split. I think the reason it seems like therefore is not and then just this all happens and follows sequences is fractured kingdom. There's a power vacuum, and therefore with a power vacuum, who is going to take the place for this baby king? And while we have to worry about the Saxons, this book one is focused on Britain. So the through line is Britain unity. How do we make sure that we are together so that for any outside threat, we're good. We are ready to face any opponents. And so that through line for that macro through
framing.
line, and then the micro framing is Durfel and his upbringing and knowing that he was his setup was that he was thrown into the pit, and because he was thrown into the pit, he miraculously survived. But this seeking of justice, which gives a through line of all the thought-provoking messages we already talked about. But in the end, he actually kills the druid, and Nemoy also finds her justice as well. So it's like the two through lines are the personal journeys of Durfel, Nemoy, etc., of seeking that justice or getting that justice. If you do feel peace in the end, who knows? That plus uniting Britain, and each scene in that was building to that crescendo.
Also, in the first part, we get from the narrator of Durfel in the future of I was a loyal, not just a soldier in King Arthur's army. I was a friend. I was a close
a confidant,
a close friend, confidant. I wasn't one of his knights, but I was a close member of Arthur's group.
Yes,
and actually well respected in Arthur's army.
Yep.
And so this book starts off with him not knowing Arthur at all, and Arthur kind of, placating and, giving this small child a chance and making him feel special. And then by the end of this book, Durfel is successful in a, great battle and ultimately, wins the day and becomes a integral part of Arthur's council and retinue of
exactly.
I'm Durfel, I'm going to make you are now a lord. I'm making you a lord. So that's kind of the through line. By the end of this book, okay, this is why Durfel's the one telling the story. He's an important figure in Arthur's circle.
Yeah, and this is why you don't hear about him in all the other legends of.
Yeah.
He's not Lancelot.
He's not Lancelot, but he is important.
Yes. And it gives you that through line. And you see after the Winter King is set up of, okay, King dead, coming here, you have the three protectors, which were Merlin, Arthur, and Owen, I believe were the three that were chosen, I think. Yes. And so Owen, at first Derfel gets sent off with Owen to be under his liege. And we already explained earlier that whole scene, to catch everybody up, was Owen does war for profit, goes and kills all these I keep saying kingdom. It's not a kingdom. It's just the other word, a serfdom, a feudal, whatever kind of structure you had in feudal society.
Yeah, some fiefdom.
Yeah, fiefdom, and comes back, and that is where Arthur then kills Owen, and Derfel now is under Arthur's rule. So with Derfel under Arthur now, Arthur starts sending him on some side quests. One of these being the kingdom of Benwick, which is in the library where we mentioned Merlin finds what I have in my notes. I now have it. It's the knowledge of Britain. It was the magic or whatever we were saying before, but the knowledge of Britain. And this is where we get introduced to Lancelot and Sorry, I'm skipping ahead, actually. I'm skipping ahead a little bit. But in this progress section, this is where Guinevere and Arthur have their love at first sight and fractures the promise that Arthur did make to King Gofifid, because King Gofifid, after the death of Uther, actually does come and attack. And this is where we have King Gofifid, Gunlius, and all the horrors that happened to Nemoy and everybody. Arthur's then trying to seek and seal this peace, breaks the peace, and it is because of him. It is his fault. So because of this marriage to Guinevere, you then have the side quest in the 2-year skip where we see, or not 2-year skip, but we have 2 years of Derfel building up his battle prestige and being on his own, being friends with Lancelot's half brother,
becoming one of the what was the order, the
Mithras,
yes, order.
Yes. And then ultimately this leads to, after he comes back, he hears about Nemoy being on the Isle of Dead, goes to save Nemoy, very guttural, just this strange, which all these places, by the way, are real places because it is based on Britain. So you could go to the Isle of Dead today, which is also very cool. And there's not dead people, from what I've heard.
There's probably some dead people there.
Yeah, British people are dead inside.
I imagine, yeah. Anyone who sees the sun as little as they do, they're all dead inside.
Yeah.
No, what I meant is there probably are dead bodies buried there.
You're not wrong.
I wouldn't be surprised.
That's fair. That's very fair. And in the end, we have the final battle sequence with King Gofifid coming to attack, and the how that is set up, where we have Derfel is dressed as Arthur in that final battle sequence to make it look as though that is where Arthur is. And you think that is the big ruse, and you think that Arthur coming in the back is what's going to save the day. But once he is found out not to be Arthur, because he's challenged by Gofifid throwing insults, and Derfel isn't able to say anything, but the real Arthur would have said something in that moment, in that instance, but doesn't. And then you have the how the battle is described as well. If there's a couple hundred people, and he does such a good job with describing the scale of the battle, as they're being pushed back, and you're just hoping, you're waiting for that Gandalf moment. You're waiting for that the light to come over and to save you at Helm's Deep, and you're just waiting for it. Arthur does, and he finally gets over there, and you feel this thrill of the battle. You're pushing back now. Great. Arthur is coming. The shield wall stops Arthur. And again, you feel the oppression of, okay, they're actually going to end here. So the way that Bernard Cornwell wrote this end battle sequence is how you should. You should write a battle sequence like that, as in you get these moments of you feeling victory, you're feeling as though there's going to be loss, you're feeling victory. You get a little bit of mix of what moment. It also helps when you're framing and thinking about a battle in the past, of structuring in your brain of the moments. When you think of the Battle of Helm's Deep, you can go, okay, you can point the moments of the turning points of where, okay, elves and dwarves winning and humans winning, orcs winning here. Elks and you can go back and forth and remember the significant parts that made the battle.
the significant moments of the battle is when the turning point shifts, and it doesn't have to be one. There can be multiple. Like in this battle scene, there were several turning points of the very setup of the battle is, you know, Arthur and everyone are like vastly outnumbered. And it's like, there's no hope here. Even now, Arthur's allies are splintering off and trying to leave and abandon him. And then we have basically Arthur has the crazy plan of going to sending Durfel with a small ragtag team to take this crossroads section that would basically, if they can just take it and hold it for a very short time, their smaller army can hold that choke point a lot better than a wider outpost.
Yeah.
And so Durfel comes in like, hey, we're winning. We surprised them. They didn't expect it. And then the numbers start gaining. And you go, uh-oh, Durfel's going to lose. Like this, they were too exposed. And then Arthur comes and saves the day. And so like, hey, look. Arthur's army gained some degree of control. We now have a better setup. And then it's back to Gofeffet's army of the numbers just keep growing. Oh, look, they're the Irish. Uh-oh. And then each individual battle, the shield wall does hold them back. They're slaughtering a lot of Gofeffet's army. They're killing 3-1, but it's still not enough. And yeah, back, forth.
Yes, and that is where you feel that, however, therefore this happens in the battle sequence. Oh, but look at this twist. How do they react to this twist? So that's why it was done so well as well. And then in the end, Merlin storms through the soldiers and says, "Hey, by the way, I convinced the Irish. You're good."
Yeah. Okay, that's such to set up the scene. Durfel and like 50 of his men are about to be overrun.
It's over.
It's over. They're gone. They're basically like, you're going to have a noble death. And like,
you're hearing the song in the background, "Leave her, Johnny, leave her." It's over.
But
my bones in the ocean, wherever will be.
The whole battle quiets. And the army, like Gofeffet's army splits as a singular figure walks between them. And Merlin just comes walking through. And Durfel's like, is Merlin going to save us? And Merlin just goes, hey, I am going to try to find the treasures of Britain to bring back the old gods. I need people. I cannot promise you riches. I cannot promise you success. I cannot promise you life. I promise that you will fight and die for me, for this noble cause. Who's with me? Basically, no one cheers up. He's like, well, I'm going on. And Gofeffet's like going,
what are you doing?
Dude, I'll help you. Like, get out of the way. I'll help you out after we slaughtered these like 50 guys. Like, we're almost done. All right?
We just had them.
Like, come on, get out of the way. Anyway, no one will attack because Merlin's there. Like, they're all afraid of him. And he walks over to Durfel and's like going, hey, by the way, I convinced the Irish over there to actually fight for your side. So you guys are like, you're good. So you're fine. I'm going to go off and find the treasures of Britain. Peace, y'all. And then he walks away and then just, oh, all right, I guess we're pretty good. Like, they put up the storm wall and like instantly the Irish come from the back and stab all of Gofeffet's army. Yeah, and then they win. And it's like, all right.
And the great thing about that is he spoiler tag. He didn't even spoiler tag it. He just spoiled them and said, "Oh yeah, you're gonna win." He spoiled the reader and went, "This is how the battle ends. Irish are good. You got it. You're good." As when you're at the peak of the battle and you think it's usually you get the moment, which we already had the moment, which is the good thing about that battle too. If you had the Arthur moment and it failed,
yeah.
So then on top of that, you already got that satisfaction if you felt as if you had the back and forth emotional pull. This gets the rug pulled out from under you. And it's not that it's an incredible plot twist or something crazy. It's just a fun way of narrating the story and showing what the actual stakes of the matter are of, hey, here's what the real story is. And it's also setting up the larger series of, yeah, remember, this was uniting Britain and everything, but this is part one. This is book one. That puts a chapter marker at the end of this. Now let's get to the real story.
You also have just a narrative trick where I feel like readers and maybe authors want to have their main character to make it tense. They want their main character to, pull out a victory by the skin of their teeth. of like they just barely snatched victory from the jaws of defeat.
Yes.
And that's a really exciting moment. And at the end of this, it's not they barely won. No, they just very overwhelmingly won. It was like, and the Irish solved it all, and that's it. That's done. We're done. Not, barely won. They won handedly because of the Irish.
Yep.
And so it was a fun way for Merlin to set it up, and I'm glad the way it was written made that kind of overwhelming victory funny and exciting.
Yes. I think looking back at the book, it's one of those that it felt as if a lot happened too. It wasn't a significantly long book. I'm trying to, actually, we can see the page count here. I'm seeing the heck's your pages. Okay, yeah. About 350, 400 pages.
Yeah.
That's not very long at all. It feels a lot more epic and grand than you actually get from just picking it off the shelf. And it fits that category of, it does the historical fiction part well, but it also does the it gave me enough of an akin to fantasy elements in it without actually giving you fantasy. That was cool to see. But looking at the plot structure, unreliable narrator, pays off like that. How do you think back to the structure of the book, or any comment on just the overall plot of how it functioned, or why you think it was really good, what you wish you got more of, what you wish to see in the next books?
I guess I would have liked more of the latter half of the book than the first half. But then again, you needed the first half to get to the second half. But like, I loved the Isle of the Dead sequence. That was arguably my favorite compared to like the Shield Wall. Like those two were my favorite sections of the book.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was really linear in enjoyment. Every part grew based on the previous one, got more enjoyable as time went on.
Let's do world building then.
Alrighty.
World building out of 5 stars. What'd you give it?
I gave it a 4. I thought the world building was great.
Your highest, I believe, yes.
Yep.
And I gave it a 5 stars. World building floored me.
Which, so far, have you given anything below a 5?
Yeah. Plot. Just plot.
That was it.
4.5. Yeah.
Okay.
There was still 5 in there. It was just the half,
Okay, gotcha. But yeah, no, I thought the world building was great. This was such a great example of being able to absorb you into a world that normally is like, it is a grim place for humanity, and yet I don't think it was like grim reading. You know what I mean?
I understand.
Which is it absorbed you well. The historical accuracy, I can't verify myself because I'm not as well read into it, but according to our book club with people a lot better read than me in terms of Arthurian legend and British history, very accurate for a fantasy history book.
Yeah, the battle sequences, formations, stirrups from horses, always we mentioned. A couple things were made up, such as the warrior rings. That aspect of it was made up. As it's historical fiction, so you imagine there's some stretches. The Mithras Society, that I imagine was added on to, or is that in the Arthurian legends, that Mithras Society? I'm not sure if it is a part or a feature.
Mithras, order kind of thing. I don't think that is made up. I don't know about the details of it.
Okay,
but that is not Bernard Cornwall making it up from nonsense.
Oh, right.
It's he is basing it off something else.
Mm-hmm. What was your favorite part about it? Was it the historical aspects of it? Was it the way that the historical accuracy in quotes? Was it how that occurred, or was it more so the what about the world he set up? Did you see that as trying to transport yourself actually to real 500 AD? And with the twist of, if Arthur and if Merlin, if all these were characters, this is how it would play out. I guess because we're looking at actual Britain, so it's not a different world. It's not a fantasy world. There's just 500 AD Britain with inaccuracies, with made-up characters that exist here. So I guess what was your focus on the world of what did it for you that was the best part about this book, or your favorite aspect of this book?
Well, I mean, it's the combination of the side characters with the world and setting. The setting is a bunch of places where I remember, like I've been to England. I've been to a couple of these places.
Yeah.
I've seen some of this stuff. And so that's kind of cool to read about in a fantasy setting.
Yes.
Then they combine that with the cultural consistency across the characters of it definitely makes these human characters seem a little alien to us, which is kind of the point of 500 AC. It's makes sense. So that I liked the accuracy of cultural norms, the magic, the druids and everything with that, and how seriously the magic was taken in the story because the characters believed it. All of that together created a very immersive world.
Yeah.
So I thought it was great.
Yeah, it's one of the things where looking at something that's not a fantasy world of, you can pick apart a lot with fantasy and sci-fi and go, okay, what is this? Because you're making up something. A lot, obviously, again, historical fiction, but you're making up a lot of things. So I'm thinking of some of the historical fiction / light fantasy we've read, such as this, Lions of Elverson, American Gods, and there's several others, but those are some of the ones that come in my head. Of American Gods is talking about a story. It's America. It's how well is America in the year 2000-ish portrayed, and does it transport you to that America? Or does Lions of Elverson transport you to Spain? This transported me to post-Rome's fall England. And it got, the thing that floored me about it is this is a setting, the Arthurian legend genre is not something that was ever alluring to me. It was not ever something that I was immediately interested in, of thinking, oh yeah, because in my head, when I thought Arthurian legend, swords and sorcery, I've seen that all before. It's fantasy with swords and this made up character Arthur. What this did, it got me so interested in the time period. So interested to where we haven't mentioned this yet. We've obviously mentioned the pagan gods versus Christian gods, Merlin, all the things, all that is included into our world building section. But I thought it was so neat to see the absence of Rome and how you could see with the absence of Rome, how that affected society during the time of, on the one hand, how small scale the battles are, which Albert was talking to us in the Patreon about, of how small scale the battles are without Rome, because Rome had these legions of armies. But after the fall of Rome, there was these squabbles, these battles. We're thinking this is the Battle of Britain. It's hundreds of men.
Yeah.
Not thousands, tens of thousands that happened later and earlier in history. So that's on the one end. But also with this being post-Rome, it's mentioned throughout of all these old Roman structures that they just can't build or keep up with because they don't have the resources and the empire that was Rome to make they actually went backwards. This is why it's the Dark Ages. This is why there's a step back. You feel the absence of this one great empire, and now that's why we're talking about a power vacuum with Uther of dying and then having the baby king. That's the power vacuum in this book. But then you have the power vacuum that allowed this to happen was Rome going. And so, yes, I think about the Roman Empire literally every day. I love Rome. What can I say? It's the Italian in me, okay?
Yeah.
But that aspect was super cool.
It's the man in you. Let's be real. Every man thinks about Rome.
Especially Italian men. I mean, come on. It's the only thing we have going for us is what we once were.
Yeah.
What do we got?
How the mighty have fallen, huh?
Let me think about it.
You used to control the world, and now you control pasta.
You know what I'll say about my heritage as well? We are the best Arthur's manipulators of history. Nobody ever looks at us and blames us for World War II. Well, obviously you have Hitler, but nobody ever looks at us and thinks Mussolini.
I don't think that's a good point. But I would say the Germans, even the Nazi Germans, were kind of going like, "Wait,
Italy's there?
Italy was a part?
What?
Weren't they supposed to help?"
It was the long con. It was, hey, we were only going to be on the side if they won, okay? But as soon as we knew it wasn't the case, let's hang Mussolini and show how much we hated this, right?
Yeah.
So that's exactly why.
Well, that's the thing. In the word that to describe Italy,
yep,
both World War II and onward is inconsequential. In the war, inconsequential. And they used to be the great Roman Empire. They used to control the world. And now, even during the world wars, they are inconsequential.
You just sparked a thrill in me. And a deep, deep feeling of pain.
Yeah.
That I'm literally going to create the Roman Empire again. I'm getting every Italian I know on Facebook. I'm calling Nani, my other Nanis.
See, I insult your culture, your history, your nationality, your nation.
Yeah.
And you know what?
I'm American. This is just,
I see more passion out of Italians when you break spaghetti in half.
Oh, don't mind that.
That is
Do
worse.
Not pantomime.
That is worse.
Stop that.
Than insulting their history.
It is, because it's the one thing we have.
It's the one thing you still have.
It's the one thing we still have.
You can't be angry over what you have lost, but you can still hold anger for what you still have.
Exactly. And nobody will take that from us.
Except the
Don't
Chinese.
say noodles. They're very different.
My hot take is the Chinese have mastered the art of noodles way more than the Italians. It's not even close.
That's actually blasphemous. Hey,
Italians mastered the sauce. That's all I'm saying.
We also have all the cool looking stuff too. We as in Italians, the most cool buildings. Sistine chapels. You have the Pope that was just elected. We're recording
First
this now.
American Pope. Woo!
Also speaks Italian, but yeah, he is American Pope.
Taking over. America is so back, boys.
Manifest world.
Woo!
Just Italy's next, baby. Starts with the Vatican.
My first reaction of we having an American Pope, I was like, the Crusades are so back, right? Right?
How did you not like this book more? You just felt all that feeling of, oh, we're so like the Roman and
the boys are back.
Boys are back. Yeah, I get you.
No, that was the feeling I had.
Yeah. But anyway, to the point of this book, it got me to feel transported so much back into the feel of this time. I am now invested in pre-medieval Europe.
It's great,
especially with English lore and medieval stuff. So that's awesome. On top of how freaking accurate and perfect he made every battle sequence, not just in the prose, which we'll get into, but how it would actually play out. I appreciate it so much because when I'm looking at authors, how did they portray their world, the thing that he does that floored me was obviously getting me, one, invested in the time period, but two, I can't think of another example of accuracy of making me forget this is a book didn't happen kind of stuff because the battle sequence was that much. I can't say in words what he actually does with his own words of how the battle sequences play out, but there's a reason George R. R. Martin and everybody praises him for the accuracy, for the visceralness of these scenes, which gets us into Prose.
Alrighty.
Prose, what'd you give out of 5 stars?
This is something I will probably raise after our discussion.
Okay.
But we're starting off with a 3.75.
Blasphemous!
Really good.
All of this has been blasphemous, but I mean, 5 stars for me. Floored me. This is where everything comes together. Honestly, this is one of the books, I'm looking at other books of some of my favorite, 5-star reads, even 4 or 5 stars and up reads, where Will of the Many, spectacular book. Yeah. If The Will of the Many was written worse, I'd still say spectacular book. Like, regardless of the writing style, because Will of the Many isn't, like, the prose is good. There's nothing crazy about
really
it.
Good. The thing with Will of the Many and James Islington is mainly his creativity with plots.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
That's his forte.
And if the prose wasn't as good, maybe I would have all these categories lower because the way he was able to push how I felt about it, make me feel how real Arthur is. This is where the crux of this story comes to. If this was not a 5-star prose, that's why I think this was my favorite category, as I mentioned before. I have some quotes to pick out. I want to let you go, and anything from you of how set up, maybe talk about his style, what's good about Bernard Cornwell's prose. I think we did kind of beat to death the point about battle sequences.
Yeah, we did.
So is there anything else you wanted to say about his style, strengths?
He plays with the frame narrative in one of the better ways I've seen it done. Frame narratives have, I think we've been reading a lot of frame narratives lately.
A ton.
A lot. Something interesting. But beside that point,
I wonder why. Is it just a lot of stories that are successful are frame narratives, or just are
I think it's just a popular way to tell a story. But beside that is what I really liked. A highlight for this story was all of the moments in between the main parts. So we got to hear, Durfel's commentary on his own story and his relationship with the current queen, and hearing that story going on, their relationship together is like, it's interesting and definitely makes you more excited about the story. So you get, between each part, you get a little bit more about Durfel and Kywin, of what is later to happen, what they are what you're anticipating.
Yes.
You see how much Durfel cares for Kywin. The fact that that is the one thing from his life that he still keeps is the brooch that she gave him.
Yep.
And so that's even his sword that he was given by his old master. All these things he's left behind. That is the one item that that keeps to himself, even all these years later. So you definitely see that significant. And then when you're then taken back to the past of the story, all the scenes between him and Kywin are a lot more important.
Yeah.
So I like how he plays with the frame narrative quite a bit.
That's awesome.
It definitely starts you off on the wrong foot of it takes some of the tension away in the very beginning of just how this frame narrative is set up.
Got it.
But it grows on you.
Yes, it does. And you're right. We've been reading a lot of frame narratives. This one does it spectacular as well. Just how the interplay we've already discussed. I won't repeat ourselves, but for a frame narrative does everything you're supposed to do. And battle sequences, not going to repeat ourselves there. However, the examples I have pulled up are going to express this absolute incredible description. Now, I'm going to feature two big things. For maybe a third. Okay, I won't get too carried away. But one of them I'm going to set up isn't a battle sequence. This is why the prose in general just floored me. This is the description of Nimoy versus Durfel when we're getting introduced early on, of setting up their characters, of why you immediately get engaged to know who they are and how they function. It's setting up and explaining Nimoy, who is she, compared to Durfel. Durfel's being introduced to her. This is early on in the book. Here we go.
My awkward stance. Her black hair was tousled, framing her wedge-shaped face. Nimue was neither beautiful nor plain, but her face possessed a quickness and life that did not need formal beauty. Her forehead was broad and high, her eyes dark and fierce, her nose sharp, her mouth wide, and her chin narrow. She was the cleverest woman I ever knew, but even in those days, when she was scarcely more than a child, she was filled with a sadness born of that cleverness. She knew so much. She was born knowing, or else the gods had given her that knowledge when they had spared her from drowning. As a child, she had often been full of nonsense and mischief, but now, bereft of Merlin's guidance, but with his responsibilities thrust on her thin shoulders, she was changing. I was changing too, of course, but my change was predictable, a bony boy turning into a tall young man. Nimue was flowing from childhood into authority. That authority sprang from her dream, a dream she shared with Merlin, but one that she would never compromise as Merlin would. Nimue was for all, or she was for nothing. She would rather have seen the whole earth die in the cold of a godless void than yield 1 inch to those who would dilute her image of a perfect Britain devoted to its own British gods. And now, kneeling before me, she was, I knew, judging whether I was worthy to be a part of that fervent dream. She made her decision.
So that setup, what it does there, a couple things. As we were describing their characters, on the one hand, you see immediately Nimoy flowing into authority and flowing into adulthood, where his was awkward and bony and strange, and giving you that perspective of that is why Nimoy comes across as so stalwart and knowing what she wants, getting straight to the point. Her character immediately, she naturally fell into place of which Durfel cannot relate in any regard. Mm-hmm. How it's described there was so cool to immediately connect you to both characters, which you don't need anything else. You don't need to hear again, to repeat to yourself, why is Nimoy the way she is? You get that description, then automatically know how she is. But I guess, what did you take from that description of how, that example of him comparing Durfel with Nimoy?
Well, one, it is just really well written with creatively descriptive words used.
So good.
Very concise, very beautiful in its prose. But then you also have the humility of Durfel of, one, kind of have to think about this of he's writing down this whole story. He essentially not about himself. It's telling his story, but clearly he is not the main character. And so there is some humility to that. He's throughout basically all of this story, he does a lot of these different things, but he never hypes up his own accomplishment. He never really embellishes his own journey. It's when it comes to him, he's like, yeah, I went and did this. I had to get this done. And then like, I was successful, moving on. Now let's focus on Nimue. Now let's focus on Arthur. And that them is where he gives all the description. He really pulls a long tail.
I mean, he doesn't want to get too into he describes his violence, though, since he's found God in the present day, he looks back at this, and this is something that, again, that quote of, I know now that there is no joy like the joy of serving Christ, Jesus, but how do I miss the company of warriors? Mm-hmm. It's him reflecting and having this mixture of feelings of knowing he's beyond what he is writing about now, although having to give the legend of what did he go through, how did he become Arthur's confidant. And yeah, that I love that description of it. It's very clear in my head of her flowing into childhood, him being very bony in his way of getting there, and her judging. Another thing about her, she's judging him. She's judging if he's worthy for her goal and her ambitions. And so you immediately get, okay, she is, again, she's describing her character. She's the leader here. And here's another description. I'll give one more so I don't go through all of these. But this one isn't, there's so many battle sequences could have used. The Owen versus Arthur, the Isle of the Dead run through, which is still, that one's awesome. This is the end of the book where it's going through the revenge that Nimue and Durfel get against their Trenadir, the tea guy, and Gunlius. And this is the very, very end of the book of that they're about to lose, he is about to get killed and lose the battle, but he, in flashing in his head all the brutality that happened to his mother, and we're getting this kind of for the first time. We don't get to the visceral description yet until the end, till we get, okay, what did he do to your mom? All this is now coming to you in this moment of revenge, and this is the description that we get.
But how I still screamed for my mother, as Tanibers lifted me to the stars and prepared to give me to his gods. "To Cofanon!" he had shouted, and my mother screamed as she was raped, and I screamed because I knew I was going to die. "To Clonlor!" Tanibor shouted. "To Cernunius! To Taranis! To Socelos! To Bel!" And on that last great name, he had hurled me down onto the killing stake. And he had missed. My mother had been screaming, and I still heard her screams as I kicked my way through Taniber's circle of skulls, and her screams melded into the druid's shriek as I echoed his long-ago cry of death. "To Bel!" I shouted. Howlbane cut down, and I did not miss. Howlbane cut Tanibers down through the shoulder, down through the ribs, and such was the sheer blood-sodden anger in my soul that Howlbane cut on down through his scrawny belly and deep into his stinking bowels, so that his body burst apart like a rotted corpse, and all the time I screamed the awful scream of a little child being given to the death pit. The skull circle filled with blood, and my eyes with tears as I looked up at the king who had slain Rala's child and Mordred's mother, the king who had raped Nimue and taken her eye, and, remembering that pain, I took Howlbane's hilt in both my hands and wrenched the blade free of the dirty offal at my feet and stepped across the druid's body to carry death to Gunlius. "He's mine!" Nimue shouted at me. She had taken off her eye patch so that her empty socket leered red in the flamelight. She walked past me, smiling. "You're mine," she crooned. "All mine." And Gunlius screamed. And perhaps, in the other world, Norwenna heard that scream and knew that her son, her little winterborn son, was still the king.
Oh my God, that's perfect. That's perfect. And oh my God. If you read the book, you know it's perfect. You have to love the book perfectly. The prose, just wow. Wow.
I also do have another line. One, that was probably the right one to end on, but I did have one more that I wanted to give an example of.
Yes.
We have multiple examples. We have two clear examples of love at first sight in this story, which most people see as a trope, as like just cliche and normally not really exciting.
Yeah.
And I agree, generally speaking, most of the time. However, if you're a good writer, you just kind of get swept with it. You can go like, you know what? I believe you. I'm with it. This is the scene where Durfel is talking with Kywin, and they're talking about Arthur and Guinevere. And Kywin asks, like, what happened there is like,
Yeah.
do they love each other? Why did Arthur, turn me down for her? And all this is like, have you ever felt that type of love? And this is how Durfel describes the love he believes. He's telling Kywin that this is how Arthur feels, and ultimately also how he feels. I do understand that you can look into someone's eyes, I heard myself saying, and suddenly know that life will be impossible without them. Know that their voice can make your heart miss a beat, and that their company is all your happiness can ever desire, and that their absence will leave your soul alone, bereft and lost. Put in the it's really well written. Like, it's just like, I'm down. I'm down for the romance. I'm down for the sappiness. It works. So
that's a great line. I mean, it's difficult to put into words his words, because he explains things like you're saying that are, you see this all the time in different stories, but does it in a way that he can get away with anything because it's so beautiful in its language. It's what does he do? What does he do? Because what in that line makes it sound beautiful to you? Why'd you pick out that one? What is the thing that stands out to you?
Well, especially in the scene, it's a moment of vulnerability disguised as something else. Of course, setting it up of Kywin asking Durfel, "Have you ever loved anyone like Arthur loves Guinevere?" And him looking her in the eyes, and ultimately knowing like she's a princess, he can't outright say it. He can't outright say that he loves her, and he describes and it's set up like him sitting really close to her, looking her in the eyes, saying like, "I do understand that you can look into someone's eyes." One, just like a note that I'm not talking about Arthur right now, talking about the person I'm currently looking into their eyes with. And suddenly know that life will be impossible without them. This whole declaration of love and the little details of their voice can make your heart miss a beat, and that their company is all the happiness, is all that your happiness can ever desire. Of this external, like your happiness being an external thing, and just that it's not that complicated, but it's just the little vulnerability that was really well executed in the moment.
That is very true. I think with Cornwall, he doesn't just do the battle sequences right. Those smaller moments are very special as well. I think obviously we're going to be reviewing book 2 on here. I believe it's called Enemy of Gods. I think I will double check that, but we will be doing the series. I assume you'll be joining for that, Rich.
Yeah.
And I hope you guys like the Winter King review. Let us know what you thought about the book. I feel like most people will be in between us. I think the correct rating is probably like a 4.25.
You're probably right.
4.25 is probably the objective score, but the real score is a 5 stars. You will come to realize it. Let us know how much you love the book, or if you dislike the book. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.